try to start on time at all of our CALLERLAB sessions. This morning, of course, a little extenuating circumstance in the fact that we had quite a hike over there from the hotel, and a little bit further, I think, than most of us really thought. But if you get a chance, stick your head in and around the corners where they don't want you to look, because this is quite a place, the Superdome. I remember playing in the first Super Bowl that was held here. Good morning. That's why I limped, didn't you know? I got tackled real hard, and it broke my foot and my ankle. Good morning. My name is Jack Lasry, and before we go much further and introduce exactly what we're all about this morning, I'd like for you to meet the gentleman who's standing on my left, gazing through the words of wisdom he has prepared for us this morning, who will be sharing an information session with us this morning. Daryl from Oregon. Take a big round of applause from the gang. Ooh. The two of us were asked to share this program as information gatherers, instigators of perhaps a few provocative thoughts, and to carry on from there. But we have in our audience today a very illustrious person who happens to be a member of the Board of Governors and chairman of the Mainstream program. He came all the way from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. Saskatchewan is right? Okay. Okay. Martin Mallard, we're going to ask you to join us this morning, if you wouldn't mind. Step up here, because you're the guy who's been dealing with the program we're concerned about. He happened to be prepared. As we all know, square dancing has been confronted with a few problems here of late, some of which perhaps we have to take the blame for as callers and leaders and dancers with our enthusiasm, part of which we as CALLERLAB members have to take the blame, and part of which we really have no control over. The economic, social status of our country is changing. More people are working. More people are out of work. In many areas, it's a very depressed and depressing viewpoint for many Americans. And our square dance programs over the last 8, 10, 12 years are showing signs of reflecting a change. Unfortunately, the change has not been for the best if we're looking at the fact that numbers are important to us. As recreation people, the more people that enjoy our activity, basically the happier we are. The happier we are. And right now, we have problems. The major problem is a diminishing number of folks who are participating in our activity. The number of folks who enter into our activity as learn-to-dance recruits has diminished severely. And subsequently, we're exploring ways and methods to try to turn this situation around within the framework that we have the possibilities to handle. We don't have any control over unemployment. We don't have any control over economic depression. We don't have any control over the fact that American wives are working almost to a 65% degree across the country, and it's a lot harder when Papa comes home and they both have to fix dinner together rather than she has supper ready and says, "Hey, hon, we're going to take a square dance class tonight. Or we're going to take join a bowling league tonight." By the time they get the kids washed up and cleaned up and dishes put away, it's time to go, whew, and not ready to go out of the house to a 7:30 or 8 o'clock square dance class. So we're looking very hard at ways that we perhaps can make it a little bit easier for people to enter into the activity we love so much. So many times we're concerned, and we hear discerning remarks from people who are already very happy dancers. You know, these are the folks that have struggled through and they've finished, graduated, and they've danced from maybe 1 year to 25 years, and they're happy pretty much with what's going on. Oh, they'll have a gripe or two with a quarterly selection that they're not real happy with, or their caller isn't happy with, but those are, fading things, 2, 3, 6 months, and they're gone, and we're off to other things. But we're all concerned about the fact that people are moving from one plateau at a very rapid rate, and we're not replacing them. It's more and more difficult to bring people into square dancing. So it becomes obvious that we have to do something about it, and the obvious trend, of course, through dancer associations telling us, dancers telling us in formal ways, special little conventions going on like Crossfire and the one in California, which was something like Crossfire, I don't recall the name exactly, telling us, hey guys, we've got to do something about it. So for the last year or two, we've been trying to do something about it. Much like the House and the Senate, we've had two different viewpoints, two different bills, if you will. And now we're clashing together to find out which one of the bills may be the best, or maybe some way that the House and the Senate, if you will, or in our case, the 25-week experimental program that includes some plus calls coming out of, say, the House, because that's, the elected officials from all over, the people's bunch, and the boldface and italicized programs coming from, let's say, the Senate. And we're here to debate those. Unfortunately, some of us are getting more emotional than I would like to see about these issues. I think we need to keep the one thing in mind, is the fact that we're really here to help the activity. And whichever side, quote, wins or loses, or what kind of an amalgamation we get from it, we hope to go forward with a program that for a few years anyway can bring us back together working hard and diligently to make square dancing a little more easily enjoyed by the people out on the street. And what we're here today to talk about is really to listen to what you have to say in regard to one of these programs, and that is the bold-faced, italicized program. Will it work? Have you tried it? How is it working? What are your feelings about questions like, well, gee, what do we do with all those italicized calls if the dancers go somewhere and they hear something that we haven't taught them yet? Or, gee, my club dances all of the mainstream calls. How can I bring a group in that have only had 25 lessons and they only know the bold-faced calls? These are all questions we all are confronted with, we're concerned about. But let's approach it in a positive manner. If you've had real experience with trying it, let us know how it works. If you have a viewpoint about it that has absolutely nothing to do with facts, strictly your ideas, let us know. If your dancers have come to you and given you some viewpoints from their side, let us know. We're working together. We're here to try to make something happen. We're not here to fight. We're not here to argue. Without further ado, we want to let you know that you must please speak into the microphone. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and get to the point. Get to the point of what you have to say so that we can hear as many people. I'd like to hear from everybody in this room before this session is over. And it's going to be taped. So it's imperative that we use the microphones. Now, we're going to be taking notes here, Daryl and I, and Martin. It's all right. But before we start, I'm going to ask Daryl. He's ready to say a few words to us in the same vein, and then we'll get her going. Thank you.
Yes, very few words, because we did come to hear what you had to say. How did you get this out of here? Oh, I'll hold it.
And see, I'm, with a microphone.
I did want to pass on a few of the comments that we've received through the mail. We have had a lot of correspondence come in regarding this program. Let me say this, in addition to what Jack said. The mainstream list is frozen until next year. We realize that there are movements that are not in popular use. There's not a lot that we can do about that until next year, unless this whole convention at this time decides to lift the freeze, which I think is very unlikely. So that's something to keep in mind when you do approach your microphone. These are not actual quotes. They're taken out of context. And I may have edited some of them to get down to the actual intent of what the person was writing. Some of the movements included in the mainstream program have gone out of use. They feel that it is time to make some definite changes to it. The current program is too much to learn and enjoy. There again, they think it's too big. These are just a few. We receive many letters saying the same things. There is concern, on the other hand, that the italicizing of some calls is the first step to elimination of the same calls. Some people would like to see those calls stay on the program, so we're going to get both sides of it. Introduction of this program is against standardization. Basically, they were saying that their concern was that if we gloss over and shorten the program, cut it to 25 weeks by glossing over movements rather than teaching them in depth or from a variety of positions, or if we put off teaching some movements, the dancers would not be mobile. They wouldn't be able to go from one club to another. As a matter of fact, we had a lot of comments. If we graduate our dancers under this 25-week program, there will not be a place in our area for these people to dance. Either that or every club would be expected to drop way back to this 25-week graduating level. That's the type of comment that we got more often than not. We do have, as you all know, a rule that only allows us to add or delete 3 calls when the list is done. So at best, next year we would be looking at a very modest change to the mainstream program. I think by now you all understand what the 25-week program is all about. It's not a change of the list. The list remains the same, does not change. All that it does is it italicizes more calls than we previously had to make it a little easier to get done in a 25-week program, and with the idea of teaching or workshopping those italicized calls later. We also realize that very, very few callers have had a chance to really complete a 25-week course based on the italicized boldface calls. The list was a little later than we'd hoped for because it just wasn't logical. It wasn't that easy a job to accomplish. So with that in mind, Jack has something he's poking me for. Oh, I think the microphone is available. This session is for opinions, for plus, minus, pro, con. I like it, I don't like it. But do use the microphone every time. State your name and where you're from.
Okay, let's kick her off.
Jim Chamondale from St. Louis, Missouri. I'd like to congratulate the group for the list. I think it's a lot of work that has been done, a lot of thought has been put into it. I got the list. My first reaction was a negative reaction when I saw it, because I resist change more so than most people, I think. But when I looked at it, I realized that in St. Louis, that's what we're doing. We are looking at teaching the most commonly used mainstream and workshopping in our dances and in our new dancer dances some of the other movements. It's working well, and we have our classes are up. Our clubs are running some of them 28 squares of dancers. We have 54 clubs in the area, and we're all doing the same thing. And I think it's a realistic look at the mainstream list. Thank you.
If you wish to speak and are planning on it, kind of line up behind whoever is speaking at the mic so we can expedite the lapse of time.
Gordon Blunt from Central Florida and North Carolina. You can call it what you like, Jack. My question is, I haven't used it as yet. When I go to the area like in Central Florida to use this program, I like to do it this way. And the question I have is, how do you communicate with the other callers that are not here? The word is communication to get out to the other callers as you're using this type of program. So I like some guidelines along that line. Plus, the fact that if you're using all the boldface and you want to graduate the dancers, a lot of them look forward to getting them to the diploma. Do you graduate them with that first part, or do you go all the way through? And then, of course, you would say you graduate them with 25 lessons or the other. So that's the questions I have. Thank you.
Do you want us to try? We're not here to try to answer all of those. We want to hear what you have to say. We're going to make some notes on these, and if time permits, we'll try to answer specific questions like that. But those are the kinds of questions that we're all asking, about these programs. Anybody like to speak?
Ellis Wright from Columbus, Georgia. This is my first time at CALLERLAB, but I don't know how long this list has been in existence.
You mean the bold-faced?
Right.
It's brand new. The bold-faced italicized, the new one,
As far
just
as
been
being
formulated
out.
over this since the last CALLERLAB convention.
Okay, but in our area, we have basically used a program like this, eliminating some of the variations of moves. I was just looking at it, and you're only eliminating 5 full moves, variations of others. But I've got one question here where it says ocean waves, types, and then it eliminates all of them under it.
Can I answer that, Jack? You'll have to move over here. The chord doesn't move.
This question has come up many, many times. The reason for it, in the correspondence that we had on this, was that these are really not moves. They're descriptions of positions. When you teach an Alamo swing through or an Alamo style type thing, you are teaching that position. So why should we have it as a separate listing on the list? It creates 3 more numbers, which in reality don't exist. When you teach a swing through, you actually teach the ocean wave. So why should we have it on the list as a number to count?
Right. But there again, we've been using a program similar to this for about 3.5 years, and it works well. Then coming back and teaching the variations in a workshop.
Ellis, it sounds like what you're saying is that in your particular part of the woods, Columbus, Georgia, the callers in graduating their classes are already deleting a great many of the italicized calls from the basic learning program.
Right, to a graduation point and then going into a workshop.
Okay, then you go to a workshop that picks up the balance of the italicized calls. Is that the way you do it?
Right.
Okay.
John Chevalier from Dayton, Ohio. We have 2 handouts. One is the bold-faced mainstream. The other is the experimental 25-week program. There are differences between them.
Were you here when we opened up the program?
No, I wasn't. Okay.
What started at 9, sir?
Oh, if you covered it, I was here. If you covered it, I missed it. Okay. But what are the differences between the 2 lists?
Okay, if you were here at 9 or thereabouts, you heard us mention that we have a problem, and we're trying to solve the problem of making it easier for people to enter into our activity. And we have 2 approaches, all right? And we're debating the pros and cons of both approaches at this convention. And hopefully, maybe when we get through and have all the information, the data acquired, we can put something together that says this is the program that we are now accepting, one or the other, a combination of the best of both, so to speak. And that's why we're all here, and specifically we're talking about the bold-faced, italicized, a mainstream list as it now stands.
Norm Choquette from Massachusetts, the northern contingent. And I'm sorry I'm late this morning, but I didn't know I had to walk 4 miles. And I had a small breakfast.
Would you all please say,
I've been listening to a lot of callers and talking to a lot of people, and it seems that the general consensus for all of this is so that we can get the new dancers into square dancing without having to learn all of this stuff. And it seems that what we're trying to do is get them out of class quicker so that they can become club members instead of being class and club, so that we can make them part of the club and help the club financially. So we want to graduate them in a shorter period of time. At this point, I can't see that we're doing anything. We are doing something, but I don't know that it's what we're really looking for. If we take the italicized and the bold list, and so we eliminate all of the italicized calls and teach the rest in 25 weeks, but then we do have to come back at some point in time and spend another 15 or 20 weeks or whatever it takes to teach the rest of it. So we have gained really no ground at all, because we still have to come back and spend that length of time teaching them. It seems to me that what we have to do is to shorten the list by eliminating some calls. Okay, and I'm not familiar with all of them, but I know that, for instance, touch a quarter and curly Q, I think everybody in the room knows that those do the same thing. And so we could throw, for instance, curly Q, we could eliminate it, and I think the only place it would affect anybody would be your advanced level callings for curly cross. It might affect the curly cross, but those people certainly can learn that with no problems. So I think what we have to do is shorten the mainstream list by eliminating calls. And I think that you people are all knowing, in CALLERLAB, I think we could do that and effectively eliminate calls that we absolutely do not need. Thank you.
Daryl would like
to. Yes, I think everybody agrees with you that the list needs to be shortened somewhat. At least I would think the majority would agree with you on that, but that can't be done until next year because of the freeze. But I just wanted to say that the reason that this is all happening comes out of a statement that was made to us, a charge that was given to us last year at the Baltimore Convention. It was felt by the membership that one of the problems that we have in the activity is it takes too long to get the new dancer involved in the activity because of the 41-week teaching program. They felt that the 41-week program was unrealistic. We need to get the dancers in quicker than that, and that coupled with the fact that the best guesstimate was that most of the country, most of the caller teachers were taking between 25 to 30 weeks to teach their class. So what we have here actually is an effort to put together a program or a list, if you like, by bold-facing and italicizing the calls that more or less reflects what's actually happening out there anyway, which, if it does that, it really doesn't change a great deal from what's been going on. It shouldn't change a great deal from what's been going on. So take it from there.
Next gentleman.
My name's Red Hennon from Troy, Michigan. I'd like to share with you something we've experienced in the state of Michigan. Our Callers Association, at the end of April, have a spring festival we put on. At that spring festival, we have our new dancers also at that festival. In the state of Michigan, part of Michigan is under the old system, and part of it are using the experimental 25 weeks. We always declare what calls we will limit ourselves to in this mainstream dance. So you can see we were confronted with a new problem. When we combined both lists for our spring festival, there was only about 4 or 5 calls we actually eliminated from the mainstream we wouldn't call, so that we could actually bring on all of the dancers that are presently learning at this particular time. So it is working in our area, but we just eliminated a few calls.
I'm interpreting that to mean that in spite of the fact that we had some differences of opinion in the two lists at this, we'll call them A and B at this point, and when it came right down to the nitty-gritty of calling to dancers who had some learned under list A and others under list B, that there proved to be very little discrepancy in the end, and that the dancers and the callers could easily get together and call a dance and the people would have a good time. Is that what I'm interpreting?
That is. We didn't like our other alternative of not allowing the people with the 25-week program to come to our convention. We wanted them there also because they also are square dancers. And
but
so
you didn't call any of the plus calls to them?
No, this is the basic list. No, I'm not talking the other list from the other room. I'm talking the bold-faced list.
Okay.
All right? Yeah.
Very good.
Jim Mayo from New Hampshire, and I may be rocking a boat here, but the italics on the mainstream list, the changed italics, in fact have made very little change in the overall list. Another way of approaching the problem that we're facing would have been to eliminate all the subgroups in the family completely and to list the mainstream program as we do every other program with just the primary call, leaving the judgment about what variations in the hands of the individual teacher. We would have accomplished, I think, the same thing if we'd done that without changing the list at all. We just said, these are the primary calls. We'll teach them in as much variety as we're able to with each class that we teach, and the caller will have to confront the problem of how much variety within a particular call can be used. It's another way of approaching the problem, is just to list primary calls only, as we do with the plus and advanced lists.
Anybody else like to speak to the question that we're talking about? Thank you.
Roger Griffin, Greenfield, Indiana. As I remember, I sent back a mainstream list with the moves that we thought should be removed. I don't remember ever getting a correspondence on how that turned out. Does anybody have?
Well, here's the man who handled the entire program.
I can't stand up here and vouch for the mail services in our countries. It was mailed. Basically, the survey showed, if Jim will hand... I'm sorry, I should have brought this up with me. It showed that curlicue, centers out, and single hinge, and one other. Partner hinge. Definitely showed a vote for removal. I'm going to add a couple of things to that question, if you don't mind, so that the people can get some of the history of how this went. The actual italicizing went through two stages. We did send one out in August to the committee here in CALLERLAB, the executive committee, because they wanted to review it first to see how it fit in. They felt that it was not quite enough italicization, so we went back to the computer figures that we had and changed the base so that we could detract more. The interesting thing on the first survey, I'll read the ones that came out for italicization, and all of these came within 2 or 3% of being on a deletion list in the first survey that we made last year. Split the ring, half sachet, divide, left turn through, centers out, peel off. Peel off, by the way, was over 50%. Partner tag, curlicue, fan the top, and partner hinge. Those were all very, very close to deletion. We went back to the italicization, of course, and the list that you presently have came out of further computer work to see which ones came up. One of the interesting things that did come out of the survey was Jim Mayo's recent work. I got the data just before CALLERLAB. He did a survey, was it 35 callers, Jim, that you worked? 50 tips with 8 callers across the country. They're all over the country, and he did a frequency count basically on these mainstream dances. He went through about a page and a half before he actually hit an italicized call in the numbers. All the italicized calls were left, 3, 4, 5 times out of some 4,000 calls that were used. And it's very interesting to see that the actual usage by callers who, quote, call a full mainstream program was really a bold-faced program that they were calling. Some of you are questioning the fact of the teaching. The callers who are teaching a full mainstream program really have been using this italicized list for quite a number of years. They have never put it in writing. But they have found that they can teach square through very early in their program and let the dancers get some mileage before they teach the variations. When the time comes for a variation, 5-10 minutes of teaching time are necessary for the variations, so that they have found that they can actually teach in about 28 to 30 weeks a full mainstream program.
Before I ask Jerry to make his comments, I'd like to ask a poll here, a hand poll. How many of you, your primary calling during the course of a normal period of time, your primary focus is mainstream clubs? Mainstream clubs.
Clap, please. Clap so it'll go on the tape.
No, we're going to count hands. We're going to count hands. Okay, you help me count.
Oh, I don't know whether I count that high.
Huh?
I got 21.
I counted about 27. How many did you get?
I got 21.
21? Okay. Okay, another quick question. How many of you call in rural areas versus cosmopolitan areas? Rural area callers, hands up. About 23, 24? So it's a lot of the same folks. Just to provoke you a little bit, to be a little provocative here, begin thinking about whether you feel the best route for us to take in reducing the number of calls and reducing the number of weeks it takes to learn how to dance is the mainstream bold-faced approach preferable to the 25-week experimental program that includes, the 6 or 7 plus calls. Now, I don't want you to raise your hands. I want you to mull that around a little bit, and we're going to address that and ask you to address that question behind the mic in a moment. But first, Jerry.
Jerry Junk from Nebraska. Jack, last night when we were visiting, for a number of years, those of us in our area, in the rural areas, have been teaching lessons in about 25 weeks, more or less. Almost everybody does. And this boils over into the next period, actually, the mechanics of teaching. But basically, on a de facto basis, most of us in our area teaching 25 weeks, we teach the entire list. And de facto have italicized some calls without actually coming out and stating it formally. And the reason for wanting 25 weeks, less than 41, how do you sell 41 weeks to new people? Tell them it takes 41 weeks to learn to dance. They say, I'll go boatling. And they do.
Please save our time by being behind the microphone as soon as possible.
Jerry just prompted me to get up. On the other side of that same question, I agree that...
Tell us who you are and where you're from, please.
Dan Carruthers, Yukon Territory, Canada. I think I agree with my own experience, which hasn't been great, but people do teach in a lot less than 41 weeks, the whole list. I've done so myself. However, we have a situation in our area right now. I'm a dancer in a club, a mainstream club, and because of CALLERLAB's 41-week list, the dancers are hammered all winter long. They feel like they're in their first year of university. They come out of there totally frustrated and discouraged, and on top of that, they graduate and start getting crossfire and relay the deucey and all kinds of other things thrown at them within 2 or 3 months of joining the club afterwards. So on the one hand, you have 41 weeks, some callers taking that to heart, and not having 41 weeks to do it, they cram it in 25 or 30 weeks, and then you have more sensible fellows who italicize but don't tell anyone about it. Thank you.
Frank Taylor from Arlington, Texas. The Dallas-Fort Worth area has been using this italicized list ever since the 41-week program came out. They never did. The Dancers Association and the clubs themselves says, you will teach 20 to 25 weeks or we will find another teacher. And there was no doubt about it. There are only about 3 or 4 exceptions. Rocky Strickland and Melton Luttrell taught the full 41 week, but they're the only 2 that ever got away with it, but they have their own halls.
Let me ask you a question. When you were told by the dancers, the clubs, leaders, that you had 25 lessons, and that's max, teach people how to dance, did you try to cram all the calls on the list in there, or did you primarily hit the bold-faced calls?
Just the bold-faced calls. Like the left square through, for instance, that's done if there's going to be a student hoedown. The dance preceding it that is going to be, usually the caller will run through the variations. But they don't try to, but this italicized list has been what's been used in that area the whole time. They never did go to the full.
Are these dancers then who graduate from the classes at primarily the bold-faced basics in 25 lessons, are they able to make the transition into the clubs without too much difficulty?
Some clubs yes, some clubs no. It's according to whether the caller is hung up on calling plus movements the first dance after they get out of lessons.
Well, they really should be entering into a mainstream club, would you think,
In the Dallas area, there are 2 plus tips in every dance. This is decreed by the club
In other words, it's a mainstream dance, mainstream club, but there are 2 plus
Well, there
tips
are
throughout the
two
evening.
plus tips throughout the evening, yes.
We're all different, aren't we?
Bill Wright, San Antonio, Texas. First of all, the 2 lists that we're dealing with address 2 different problems as I understand it. The one is to shorten the overall teach program, the one we're dealing with here today, this period, so that we can bring people in more expeditiously and have a appropriate amount of time to teach them. Excuse me. The other list approaches the problem, or an attempt to solve a problem in those areas who really don't have clearly defined mainstream and plus programs. We need to keep that locked tight in our minds so that we're not getting the 2 confused. Another confusing factor is that if you look at both lists, forget about the plus on the one and compare the mainstream calls that were omitted from the 25 experimental list, it's primarily the italicized items, if not 100% of them. I think this is the way to go. The way to go being the italicized list that we're dealing with by shortening the list, getting rid of I said this yesterday, shortening the list and getting rid of the things either off of all programs or into a plus program or whatever of the calls that we don't use in the mainstream. If we don't use them, let's remove them. Let's not have them hanging out there that some guy's going to come along and call, and then your dancer's going to come back and say, he called that, why didn't you teach me?
Just one comment so you'll understand why the 2 lists are similar. Red Bates did have access to the data from the mainstream committee.
Jerry Reed from Austin, Texas. I have a couple of points that I'd like to make. One being, it seems like most of the guys that I talk with and the gals that I talk with are not taking the 41 weeks to teach the present program. Most of us, I think, are somewhere between 25 and 30-something. I try to take 30 at least, is one point. And I do use somewhat of an italicized list. I don't think I eliminate all of those that are italicized on this list. But my concern is that we're trying to say that we're going to reduce the time that it takes people to learn to square dance, and we're going to reduce that down to 25 weeks. From a practical application, I don't see that we're going to reduce it at all, because many people are now taking 25 weeks, and at the most 30 to 32 perhaps. So I don't see a reduction at all unless we say, well, the present list is recommended for 41 weeks. We're taking 30. That's a 40% reduction. We'll take a 40% reduction off the 25 and teach it in 18 weeks. So that's what concerns me most about what we're doing. I'd like to see us do something, and I agree with Bill that probably the best thing would be to just eliminate those moves and get them out of, if we're not going to use them, get rid of them. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that the committee said let's change a great deal. There again, you can't change the list this year. What they did was change the difference between which calls were up front by bold-facing and italicizing, move back. Nothing has been eliminated, and you're right. The whole idea, the hope was that not a whole lot was going to change, except CALLERLAB, instead of recommending 41 weeks, will possibly, and this is still experimental at this stage, isn't it, will possibly recommend 25 to 30 weeks rather than recommending the 41 weeks, which seemed to be unrealistic because nobody was doing it anyway. Or very few, I shouldn't say nobody. Go ahead.
Tom Albright, Chillicothe, Illinois. I come from central Illinois. Would characterize the square dancing in central Illinois as probably somewhat more than a third of the clubs are mainstream, roughly a third are plus, and maybe somewhat less than a third are A1, A2. Over the past few years, I'd say the clubs and the callers have tried to follow the mainstream, the plus, and the A1, A2 list as they've been advocated by CALLERLAB. Now, to do that, lessons have started in September, graduate in March or April, and maybe get in the 25 or 30 weeks. But in addition, the callers then have grouped together to offer a summer program, kind of a workshop program, where they pick up the rest of the italicized calls. By and large, I'd say the Central Illinois callers would vote for reducing the list, the mainstream list. The boldface and the italicized list looks like a good start. Certainly, I think they would vote for taking some of the calls off the list. They, like some others have mentioned, many of the dances have mainstream, but you're contracted to have at least one pre-announced plus tip. So that's a pretty common way of dancing in Central Illinois area. The Central Illinois callers, when they first saw the 25-week experimental program, were pretty unanimous in writing a letter to CALLERLAB expressing opposition to the 25-week experimental program, because when you finished, you were not a mainstream dancer, you were not a plus dancer, at least as we know it in Central Illinois.
Ken Brennan, London, Ontario. I'm very fortunate in my area. We have a beginner class, mainstream group, and a very gentle plus club, and I call for all three. So this gives me complete control over what happened. A year ago, we had with our class 30 weeks, and we try to stay with the basic program during the entire 30 weeks. The second year, this past winter, we shifted that same group in their second year to the 25-week program to complete their education in terms of this particular list. So in 2 years, 2 winters, they've had a chance to look just at this list. In the third year, we'll get them into club and let them dance the plus program. Now, it seems to me that a lot of these movements need to be eliminated. I believe that every night should be fun for our dancers, and there should not be an entire workshop evening for them, year after year. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to dance to Jack Lasry, back when we had 50 and 75 basics. He called the 50 basic program to dancers who were capable of dancing the 75 week, and he worked our butts off. I think we need more experienced callers with less figures, less movements, and let's dance them, let them play with the things they know and give them a bit of variety. Thank you.
I'm Francis Eller from Kansas. I agree with the man that just spoke, and I think one of our big problems is that we have callers here that's called for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and we let a club officer that's been dancing 3 or 4 years tell us what to call and how to call. And I think we must stand up with our leadership and start to be leaders in the field. And I don't think that, as you said, Jack went out there and called a 50 basic club and called an interesting dance. You may have to work a little harder. You may have to work a little harder to call an interesting dance. But you're getting paid for it. That's your job. The man from Dallas commented here about 2 tips of plus. I don't think that should happen. And we had a club at home that told me when I went to call a dance for him that the 4th and the 7th plus would be a plus tip. I said, well, it will not be tonight. And they said, why not? And I said, you're charging those people all the same price. You're charging those people all the same price. If you want to refund them some money for not dancing 2 tips, then I'll do it that way. The club caller told me about 3 months later that they had given up on the 4th and the 7th tip of being plus because they started getting people not to come to the dance because they had to set out 2 tips. I think we have to be leaders.
Let me say something here, if I could, please. Keep in mind, gang, that what we're talking about here are programs that are going to have to be used everywhere, not just for your specific circumstances in your specific area. You have to have a program that's going to be able to be used. where he's competing with dozens of other callers, dozens of other clubs, as well as being used by the farmer who's going to jump off his plow, change his coveralls maybe, and go in once a week and teach a class, and he's the only one in the area. You've got to have something that's going to fit everybody. The in-depth teach is another problem altogether. You know, when you start talking about teaching about all these varieties of positions and things, you run into problems. That maybe that's something that ought to be addressed in this 25-week. Maybe Jim was saying earlier, lump them into a family name rather than listing everything within a family. Just put the heading and leave it up to everybody out there. Is that a loaded gun? You know, is that say, well, you should have taught? Well, maybe we should take a look at it and say, well, 25 weeks we're capable of teaching this movement from these positions or these formations only, or these arrangements only, and put those kind of restrictions on it, rather than the other way of saying just put the heading and let everybody do what they are capable of doing. But when you start looking at these, always keep in mind that it isn't just going to affect you, it's going to affect the whole square dance world. So think about the other guy while you're talking.
Before I ask Jim Mayo to make a comment, would everybody stand up? Turn to your corner and do a left dollar man, please. Come back to your partner and give her a big yellow rock. Raise your hands up real high and say, mercy. Turn yourselves around 3 times, clap your hands twice, and have a seat. I'm not going to yellow rock with you, Daryl Clendenin, no matter what you say. I might say something before I turn over. I appreciate some of the comments about, you know, coming in and calling an interesting 50 basic dance or 75 basic dance. It's a nice ball game when you can walk in as a guest caller and leave town and say, man, I called all my cute little goodies tonight, you know.
Don't have to use them next
But when you're dealing with the folks on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, it's another ball game, and most of us do that, including all 3 of us sitting up here on the stage. So, you know, it's a different ball game when you see the same faces every week. Jim?
As the gentleman on the stage realized, one of the privileges of being a board member in CALLERLAB is that every night when you come home, there's a letter waiting for you from the home office. the pile gets deep, and this year many of them had to do with the proposed new programs. One of the exercises I did on company time before I left to come to the convention was to count up the pluses and the minuses. And I'm struck as I hear most of the speakers here this morning speaking in favor of the proposed italicized list and acknowledging that, in fact, we've been doing this all along. Most of the letters that we got, my count was like 28 to 4, were opposed. Flat out, no way should we ever mess with this. We dance the whole list in our area, and people won't be able to go to dances if we go the italicized route. And I'm just curious to know if anybody has any ideas why the male response is so much different from what we're hearing in this room. That's confusing me.
Gee, these things scare me. Ron Balaz from Romeoville, Illinois. Unlike Tom, I live in Romeoville is a suburb of Chicago. And we have approximately 180 square dance clubs. 98% are plus or above. Every caller there teaches approximately 25 to 30 lessons. And in those lessons there, the first 25 approximately I would say this mainstream, and the last 5 are like an introduction to plus. And then during the summer, dancers or students are encouraged to attend a workshop on plus, which again extends the lessons. But I don't think it's so much of educating the new students, it's educating the leaders of square dancing, the dancers who are in charge of metropolitan areas or these plus organizations, because they are the ones that are forcing the new dancers into these other levels long before their time. So I think that's something we have to look into.
I'm Len Berquist from Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I believe that the italicized, bold-faced mainstream list is the way to go. I don't think that we need to add further complication in the mainstream program, and where we do have mainstream dancers or a healthy mainstream program, I would not like to see those people that are dancing mainstream encumbered with some of these plus movements. My wife being one of them who took lessons in 1960 and never learned plus, and she gets to dance every once in a while. If we start adding plus into the mainstream, she'll never get to dance.
My name's Tom Foster. I'm from Kansas. Responding to Jim, our Callers Association, we're kind of small. I think there's about 15 members in our association. Voted unanimously that we were not in favor of the italicized list. And I say unanimously, I've got to admit that I voted in that as well. I've done a lot of thinking and listening since I've been here, revised my thinking somewhat. My thought at this point is yes, we've been using the italicized list even though it wasn't italicized. Maybe we didn't even know we were doing that, but we have been doing that. However, each caller is doing it independently. And therefore, we do have that problem of a dancer graduating from this class not being able to dance with the dancer graduating from that class, at least in a smooth manner. And I think where we're going right now, I really believe is in the right direction. We've got to standardize it, whatever it is we do, so that our dancers can go from one area to another. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of standardization, just a question. You think that the committee, or there should be a committee to study and the movements as they're being used, as they're being taught, and recommend dancing formations and arrangements within the mainstream program to more or less limit the depth of teach that you have to go through? You're talking about 25 weeks again, or at least do something that will reflect there again what's already happening out there? Because one of the reasons for having the 41 weeks for teaching initially was the fact that you were expected to teach in depth every movement, and the fact that they were not doing it was what was allowing them to get through the program in less than the 41 weeks. That's a question.
You want to make an answer for both? Withdraw?
No, maybe later. Think about it. Think about it. Earl?
My name is Earl Johnston from Connecticut. It sounds to me like you're back where we were 12 years ago. We were arguing about the 50 and 75 basics, and then they came up with the mainstream list, and then we had families, and the history behind that is we've always argued, and it seems to me that my basic premise then has not changed. You can't get everybody in the whole United States doing the same thing because their situations are so different. And to try and come up with an overall, all-encompassing for the whole world, your goals are too damn high. You can't do it. You just can't. The guy that can only have a short program or a short season can't possibly do what you're asking. And then there are fellas who are real leaders. Like old Francis, I'm not sure they thought he was right. They were afraid of him, see? About whether he should have an a plus tip or something. But there are leaders, and then there are fellas who aren't. There are fellas who want to call so bad they'd pay the clubs if they could, let them call. Well, you're not going to get them to argue and lead, but I think your goals are so damn high that I don't think you can achieve them. It's a marvelous thing, but I just don't think it's achievable. It's too.
Earl, do you think that it would be more conceivable to say that we all need a basic foundation program which might be bold-faced?
Sure.
And everybody needs to teach everything that is bold-faced and then suit the italicized calls that are left over after we get through deleting some next year, I think. to individual areas to decide which ones their areas would dance or need to know to dance?
That's right. I have always felt, even with CALLERLAB itself, that it's too big. But if you could come up with this list, and then say, okay, this is it, and then let the areas. They're doing it. Somebody said, where is it, Dallas? I don't know the country that well. Dallas, Fort Worth, are those near each other? Are they? Yeah. Well, they said they've got a list there.
About from one end of Connecticut to the other apart.
Okay, well, that's pretty close. That's pretty close. But if they've got this list that's working down there, then they're not going to change, And if the Canadian fellows do it in 2 years, marvelous. I can't even get a beginner class anymore, so I don't know. I'm not a great one to talk, I'll tell you.
We have a freestanding microphone.
I'm Whitey Ahmed from Minnesota. There aren't many of the Minnesota callers here, but I see Warren is here. I think there are 2-3 of us. Basically, we think we're a pretty strong mainstream area. And I think, to the best of my knowledge, nobody takes over 25 classes. We just don't operate that way. And I teach the list, the 68, but I'm sure that I do have some italics that I use. And I think most of the Minnesota callers do, don't you think, Warren? Now we're having our state convention coming up now, and I'm scheduling the callers. And in no way have I scheduled anything relative to the 25 or this shortened list with the italics. We just scheduled the Wade is going to be calling for it, and we just tell him to call whatever he wants to on the list. We don't single out and say, hey, don't use Dixie style or anything like that. But I'm not so sure that we in Minnesota wouldn't go along with deleting some of the figures so that we do come up with a list. But I'm not so sure that we should have them in italics. I think if we ever come up with a list, I think we should say this is a list. I don't think we should have some that we could use if we want to, because then we run into the problem. And I think that the only I don't know of anybody in Minnesota that taught this list. Do you, Warren? Do you know of anybody that taught this list in Minnesota? Did you? You did, huh? You must. I don't know of anybody else that did. Did you, Don? Well, there's 2 or 3. I don't know them all. I think Verge did in the cities. But I'm not so sure that we wouldn't be in favor of it. Of course, the list came out pretty late, didn't it? Before we got it. Pretty late.
About 2 months ago.
Yeah, it came out pretty late. So we will have a State Callers Association meeting now in June, and I'm sure that this will be discussed there too. But so far, we've been pretty comfortable with the list, mainstream list, and the plus list in Minnesota.
Question was brought up here before the next gentleman speaks. How many of you, just in a straw vote basis, would like to see all the calls on our mainstream program in a bold-faced method? Just reduce the number down to the point where it can be comfortably taught in 25 lessons, and all of it should be taught, versus the concept of a bold-faced program that we all would teach, and the italicized ones that would, quote, be picked up later, unquote. When, where, and how, that has to be determined by you and your area. How many would rather see all the calls on a bold-faced situation, period? Excuse me, I didn't hear you, Greg.
Clarification. When you say a bold-faced list, for example, would you say circulate as one figure without listing anything else?
Mm-hmm.
Circulate that
Yeah. Well, let's say we have an italicized call. An italicized call would be what? Pick me out one. Anyone. Left swing through, okay? So, as a variation of swing through, the left swing through is italicized. Would you like to see the list say swing through and left swing through as being 2 calls versus an italicized situation with the left swing through obviously being the italicized? Or just swing through and let you take your choice of the amount or the depth in which you wish to explore. So there are really 3 choices, aren't there? That we really are, where we're narrowing it down somewhat, pinning it to 3 possibilities. Now, this out of a straw vote, then, let's repeat the 3 possibilities, okay? One would be to just list calls, and then you would go to the degree of depth that you want. All calls would be, quote, bold-faced in that manner. Primary call. Okay? Number 2 would be the use of the italicized program as it now stands, where you would, quote, pick them up at your leisure when you want to, if you want to. And number 3, what was the third one?
Left swing.
Oh, to list the left swing through as well as the swing through, and identify the variations that would be taught and needed by the dancers. Okay? Those would be the 3 possible ways that we could go. Okay? It's just straw vote. Nothing, of course, would be written in stone here. How many of you would like to see just the call listed, and you would take the degree of depth into your own situation? Hands up. Let's just get a count here so we can compare. Yeah. Tom, 17. How many did you get on that side?
20.
About 38. About 38 went to the fact they would like to see just the main bold-faced family call, and you take to the degree of depth that you want. Okay? How many would like to see it with every variation identified as well? Hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Okay? How many of you would prefer just to italicize all the variations that would be available to us, and we would do them as we so see fit, which is basically the way the list is printed right now. I see about 10. Okay, so it's somewhat at this point, overwhelmingly, I think, in favor of just give us the important call, let us run with it from there. That's what I see. Well, I think it gives them the latitude in their own area to maybe get with their callers, their dancers, and say, hey, we're not going to use left swing through, we're only going to use swing through, and, as an example, and go from there. Interesting. Tom?
Tom Sellner from Maryland. I live in the primary upper rural counties of Maryland, and also call in the metropolitan D.C. area, so I see both sides of the coin and have to deal with both situations. And our Callers Association, which is about 70 callers, is also made up of a combination of lower outer rural Virginia area plus the D.C. area, which is a large metropolitan area. So we have clubs of all kinds in our area. And on looking at these lists, let's go back to what really happened in our area. We had the 75 basics at one time, and that worked fine. It was a good program. It worked. The dancers came out very proficient dancers. You knew when they went to the festival, hey, I know that dancer's going to be able to do it because he can do those 75 basics. Along came the longer 65 family program, and then we started increasing our lessons to deal with this because we all felt, well, most of us felt, that we should teach it. Well, a few tried it and said, well, we just can't do it. So what they do, they italicize. That's exactly what they did in our area. And so in our area, you know that when you go out to call a dance, that you stay away from a certain number of mainstream calls and a certain number of plus calls. You just don't call them at an open dance because everybody has done their own italicizing. Some people teach 25 weeks. Some people teach 30 weeks. Some do teach 40, and that's about 1 or 2 callers. But the whole point is that we, as a group, after we reviewed both these programs, the bold face and the 25-week thing, and actually, since it was the convention was in Baltimore last year, most of our callers were at the convention, the ones that were qualified. And so we hoped out of that program would come something that we could say, hey, this is at Queer Dancing now, and we've got it. Well, we were disappointed, both in the timing of the list came out, because a bunch of us were going to try it experimentally, but after we decided it came out too late, we all scrapped that possibility. However, just about 2 months ago, we all were discussing both programs, and the one thing that came to us, hey, It doesn't matter whether we use the bold-face one or the 25-face one. The big problem is we cannot, in our area, and our clubs will not stand having extra calls to be taught better at workshop. Our dancers just will not stand that. So, in our area, we voted in our association, and we got a unanimous vote, which is almost impossible if you know how your callers associations run, that we would accept either program if the extra calls were dropped. The ones that are italicized, either that, on either group, not all of them, of course, because there's a few of them that probably shouldn't have been italicized and should go back. You know, it's all that kind of thing. But our association, and we're talking about a combined area, I think, that represents a whole section of the country. We're very rural in some areas, very metropolitan in the other. We have very basic clubs. We have challenge clubs up to C5 in our area. We have the whole gamut. But what we want is a program that we can teach square dancing. And we want it to be something we can teach in 25 weeks. If there's some plus calls left over for the clubs that want to call themselves plus, fine. So we want a reduction in both lists. We want a smaller mainstream list. We want a stronger plus list, a smaller plus list. And eventually, in our area, we agree. We want one square dance program eventually that everybody can call square dancing. And that's what we're looking. Now, everybody says we can't, we got to wait till next year to unfreeze the list. We don't have to wait till next year. We can just get out and vote. We voted the freeze on. We can vote it off. And if we're going to wait till next year and only take 3 calls off next year, we're forcing our classes through another year of what we don't want. More time to wait to get to dance with their friends. And if they have to do plus, even more time. So if we're only going to take 3 calls off anyway, let's unfreeze the list, take at least 3 calls off this year, and take 3 calls off that year, and we'll be closer to our goal. Thank you.
The one problem that may occur, I don't know for sure on this, but I strongly feel that we do have a few people like you, sir, that are prepared to delete from the list this year. But I do not believe that any one group really represents what should be deleted from the list. As chairman of the mainstream, I could give you a list right now that represents countrywide what should be deleted, and I read it to you. That would be a start, and I do believe that most of the mainstream callers across the country would accept it, and then go from there. I made a statement a few minutes ago, and I should really correct, that the data from this list was available to Red Bait's group. It was not the only data that was available. It was one source, and I think I better qualify that. I made it available to him at his request so he could compare it to what he already had.
Yeah, I'm George Edwards from Michigan. I think what we're attempting to do here is a problem that, and we're kind of like putting a Band-Aid on the problem. We're trying to reduce the amount of time it takes for a new individual to learn to dance, but then we're not providing the place for them to dance. And until we recognize that we're going to have to let them dance at a level that's comfortable for a period of time and make the sacrifice to do it, I'm afraid neither program is going to work. And we're going to see a continued downhill decline until such time that we recognize the fact that we're going to have to bite the bullet and give those people a place to dance. Go ahead.
I'm Bob Stern, and I'm from the city where the best basketball team come in second right here, from Syracuse, New York.
Please make it quickly. We're running down to the wire, and we have one thing we want to get.
Some years I think I am the smartest caller in the world because I can get a group of people through in 25 weeks. The next year, a different class, I can get that class through in maybe 40 weeks. It really doesn't make any difference to me whether you have a 25-week or a 40-week program. I'm going to entertain the people that come to me and teach them as best I can to their ability, not my ability. Thank you.
It's a good point. What we would like to do at this point is we're kind of winding down a little bit to our time frame, which I think is about 5 minutes, 7 minutes away. We've all discussed a number of things here this morning, and we haven't really drawn a lot of conclusions. We've got a lot of good ideas on the tape. I would like to get a vote, straw vote, first. And then perhaps, if it's overwhelmingly in the positive side, we can perhaps initiate some action here this morning that would allow us to leave the convention saying we've really made the first step forward. Okay? The first, and I'm not making it in the form of a resolution, I'm making it in the form of a discussion item, that we propose to lift the freeze of the mainstream program immediately so that calls could be deleted from the mainstream program at this convention. Number one. Another thought would be, because we are limited to 3 calls that can be deleted in any 1 year, that we break that barrier and say at this time, due to the circumstances that we are all facing, that we could conceivably delete more than 3 calls. We won't say how many because it would be determined by the calls that, the numbers that end up being determined that we should delete. Now, if you feel strongly that either one of those viewpoints could expedite things and start us off in the right direction, then somebody can instigate that here. I can't, from the chair here. Martin?
Is that the number of calls at this convention we delete, or at Reno?
At this convention, can you delete? Yeah, we're trying to remove the barriers so that we can make that step forward. Tom?
I would like to make a motion that we remove the barrier remove the freeze from the mainstream list so that we can make changes this year.
He made that in the form of a motion. Anybody second that motion? Okay, now we open up that motion to discussion. Please approach the microphone. We're going to run out of time here.
I think you have to keep in mind, fellas, how many callers are here? 400?
Now, this would have to go out for a vote all over, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you can't decide. We 400 can't decide what 9,000 guys have got to do. I wouldn't even abide by that. That's not enough. I don't abide by much anyway, but that's not really fair.
To form a resolution of this type, I've got to clarify this for you as a board member. To form a resolution of this type in the time frame that we have, I don't think it's possible. I don't think that we can come to any agreement at this convention as to what should be deleted unless you are going to rely on statistical data that has been gathered. And that's not, I don't think you can do it. I know, but I want you to be very cautious about what you're doing here. If you pass a motion to unfreeze, great. Be prepared to take more out at Reno, great. But if you pass one where you're going to open up a real can of worms, Wednesday morning will be an absolute mayhem, and I think Norm over here will agree to that.
He doesn't have to run it, Bob.
That's exactly the point. If we make a recommendation to the main body to remove the freeze, then we also have to recommend to them what calls we are going to delete from it, and all this is to happen very quickly and very hurriedly on Wednesday morning, and I think we're out of line doing this.
If we make the resolution that we could lift the freeze and then handle the what would be deleted through a ballot polling by the mainstream committee to the entire membership during the course of the year, so that when we get to Reno, we would review the statistics that we had and then go from there, so that we're not wasting the whole year in Reno also, but we get it done early in Reno and then build from there. Does that make sense to you? Is that possible? Feasible? You're the guy that's got to handle it.
We could, and I think the mainstream committee could entertain a direction, shall we say, from this group, that we remove it, and that we look at the data that we have gathered and prepare a list for deletion. We have the data with us that we could actually prepare. You've heard the movements.
And if you're prepared to accept that type of thing, we can try it. But if we open it up for everybody to stand up and say, hey, I want this taken, I want that taken, I want this taken, no, I think it has to come from the mainstream committee. I don't think you have the... And I'm suffering from eye strain right now. You notice? I'm trying to speak for a committee that will give me direction. And we haven't met yet. And we have to present your ideas. That's why I'm here, because I want to know what you want when I go to that committee. If you want it opened, give us some direction. If you're prepared to accept some of the data that we have, give us that direction. But if you want to open a can of worms on that floor, I don't think that the mainstream committee can in any way support that type of action.
You know, if we're going to have to wait till next year to eliminate calls. So the freeze is off next year anyway. We don't have to make a resolution on that. If we make the resolution to allow us to delete more than 3 calls...
That's already in the works.
That's already in the works.
That's already in the works of the mainstream committee.
Okay, so that will be something that will be taken up on Wednesday morning.
It'll be taken up this afternoon.
Well, I mean, it could be in the form of a resolution on Wednesday morning.
Could be.
Could be. Well, that's all we could do anyway here, too.
Right. That is in our works right now.
Okay, well, we could identify then and instruct you to bring it up that this group is in favor of...
That's right.
Okay, let's phrase it that way. How many are in favor of making the recommendation to the mainstream committee that at next year's convention we could delete more than 3 calls?
Point of order, Jack. We've got a motion on the floor.
Well, we do.
Well,
all in favor of the motion?
No, your question hasn't been called.
Well, the first one was something that's already really been taken care of. We're just trying to clear the floor. And that is the fact that we unfreeze now would create chaos. Subsequently, it's going to happen next year anyway, without anybody making any big resolution about it or over it.
Can I speak on my motion?
Okay. Speaking to the motion?
Tom Stoner from Maryland.
Withdraw it.
No. I think that we should unfreeze the list, but I don't think we should open it up to doing everything at once. We have enough statistics to show, and in our own area, several of us have been working on this problem and have made lots of lists, trying to figure out when we came to CALLERLAB, because most of us come to CALLERLAB every year to try to do this. So we've been working on this problem every year, and we produced a list every year of what we thought, not only in our area, but what was going on. And we feel that 3 calls from the mainstream list could be taken off this year as an example, okay? And that's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, Jack had a second suggestion about open it up, but I think the deletion should be only, if I want, I'll make an amendment to the motion and say, well, we only do it anyway because we're restricted to 3 calls, that we be allowed to take 3 calls off the mainstream list to show the country what we're doing and that we're moving toward... We want something to come out of this convention. I don't want to go back to D.C. and say, hey, we failed. Or it's going to be 2 or 3 more years before we actually get anything done. Let's do something this year. Let's take 3 calls off. We can do it. We know which ones to take off. We don't have any problem with that. Let's do it.
I'm going to speak to that again, and we're getting into mainstream committee business here. The questions that went out on the survey to the mainstream committee, I'll read them, and then you'll know where the mainstream committee stands. Should we try to get the membership to allow us to drop more than 3 calls? 72 of them came back yes, 44 no. So you know where the mainstream committee stands. Should we restrain the restriction of not adding more than 3 calls in any given year? 106 said yes. They want to remove more than 3 calls. The freeze problem was a 50-50 split. They asked on a basis of 40 to 39 to have the freeze remain till the Reno convention. I think myself that this will come out as a removal. I also feel that if you people will attend the meeting, we may get something done. I don't think we can do it here.
Our time really is over, and we'll
quickie.
Have one more speaker at the microphone.
Jim Harris from Connecticut. My compadre over there just made the statement that 400 shouldn't be making the decision for 9,000 callers. Be careful. You're saying open it up, take the freeze off and everything else for cutting off calls. Let's word it that way, because you take that off and you got it open to anybody to try to add calls to. And I've heard guys that say, I'd like to see those 4 off, but I'd like to add this. We could be in a kettle of worms that take a long time to settle.
Well, I think we've given Martin Mallard, chairman of the Mainstream Committee, some direction without any formal resolutions and these kinds of things. Giving him a bloody headache as well as direction. Still a motion on the floor. Call for the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion is that we
remove the freeze on the mainstream.
That we remove the freeze on the mainstream program, so that at this convention, calls could be eliminated or added. No. Well, only eliminated? Only eliminated. Okay, rephrase that. Calls could only be eliminated at this convention. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay? Nay. The nays have it. Okay. Gentlemen, our time is more than up. We thank you for your input, your information, and I think we meet again at 10:45. We are going to do this again at 10:45. That'll probably be a different group, but if you'd like to stay, you're more than welcome. Having our own little convention up here, and time's gotten away from us. We'd like to ask the gentlemen here who are standing and visiting up front to get their hot dogs and mustard and leave. You going to stick around for another time around?
No, I'm going to leave Kenny. Well, he's worse than you are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Where's Daryl? Is he still here? He had enough the first session. My name is Jack Lasry, and I've been asked to chair an information gathering session this morning. I'm going to be ably assisted by a gentleman who just disappeared. Couldn't take it after the first session. Somebody out back, ask Daryl Clendenin to step into the office, please. Thanks, Earl. Daryl Clendenin from Oregon, who will soon be sitting on my right, will be assisting. And I have asked a third gentleman to join us this morning, Martin Mallard from Canada, who is the chairman of the Mainstream program and has been actively involved in the research and the development, if you will, of this new mainstream concept of a bold-faced, italicized program on a much greater scale than our original mainstream list was, which did, of course, include a number of italicized calls. Now, this is Daryl Clendenin, folks who don't know him. He's just arrived from the coffee shop. You didn't bring me a donut.
I'm sorry. Looks like he has to.
Oh, all right, guys. Wide blow. When we get into the conversation side this morning, we want to urge you to stand in front of the microphone, speak into it. Our session this morning is being taped. And as I indicated, it's an information gathering program. As we all know, the last couple of years, we've all been kind of looking at some negative things that have been happening to square dancing, not all of which are square dance callers or square dance leaders, dancers' fault, but some of which we have control over. We have no control over economic conditions. We have no control over people being out of work or the working wives increasing to a 60% plus ratio. But we do have control over how long it takes to dance, how much needs to be included to get people enjoying our activity, and what calls therein should be part of our program. So we've got this little dilemma. We've got a large mainstream program, which obviously, to be taught properly, takes 41 lessons. We've been told by various dance groups, ourselves, caller organizations, that that's too long. We can't do it. We've got to somewhere cut back along the line somewhere to make it possible to teach our folks how to dance and get involved in the activity in approximately 25 lessons or so. So the last couple of years, since we've had this mandate, in Baltimore last year, two things took place which bring us here today. One was, let's say, the house version of a bill, an experimental bill, a bill to take our present mainstream program, to take a look at what is absolutely necessary for us to teach in order to get folks started. Amount-wise could be easily taught in 25 lessons, and then to italicize the balance of the program so that those calls could be taught at a later date, unquote. When, where, how, and under what conditions is not specified. Then we had a Senate in action, okay? We had a bunch over there saying, well, our areas would like to say that we don't need two mainstream type programs. Mainstream as we know it, and plus as we know it. Some areas plus, number of plus clubs far outweigh the number of mainstream calls, so in essence the plus program is mainstream. We want to amalgamate the two programs into one. Take the best out of mainstream and the most popular plus calls and put them all together. So that came out of Baltimore. Not all of these programs have been truly understood. Most of them have not been well received by the public because they're not understood. So what we're doing here at this convention is information gathering. You've had a few months to look at these programs, some of you to work with them, experiment with them, to gain ideas from your Callers Association discussions, from the dancers, so forth and so on. And that's what we're doing here, in the hopes that when we leave here this year, we will at least be moving down the same direction. We'll be moving towards the goal. And what is the goal? To make it easier for people to have fun, because we're not getting them in the door. We're not holding them as long as we should. And that's why we're here. So, without further ado, we would like to know, specifically this morning, we're identifying our problem, or our project, is to take a good look at the mainstream program, the new one, potential new one, with the bold-face calls and the large number of italicized calls, keeping in mind that we currently have a freeze on our list that will run its course after this convention, and in Reno next year we will have an open door and can change that list. And also the fact that we have hanging over our heads the fact that as the rules as they now stand limit us to being able to delete no more than 3 calls at any one year, in any one convention. Now, none of these are written in stone. If any of us want to change those, they can be done by voting to change those. So while there are rules and regulations that we abide by, they're not cut in stone. They can be changed. But let's turn our attention first to the program that we're really here to discuss. And that is, how do you feel about the bold-faced, italicized program that is at the experimental stage at this point? That's the main focal point. If anybody would like to comment to that, stand at the microphone, and while you're getting ready, I'm going to turn the mic over to Daryl Clendenin, who will have a few opening remarks.
Hi. He said everything I was going to say. And very well, too, I might add. I really have nothing much to add to that unless something comes up. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, my name is Red Hennon from Troy, Michigan. I've got a question to ask to any of the callers that call for what we term up north the snowbirds, the ones that are in Florida, Phoenix, and are teaching people that are wintering in those areas. If we use this bold-faced list, are we capable of teaching those people enough calls that they can come north for their summer cooling period